Hello everybody, a warm welcome to Wisdom from North. I'm Jannike and today I'm beyond excited to be here with Aaron Doughty. Aaron is a metaphysical, personal development and spiritual teacher, and he has over 360,000 followers on his YouTube channel. He has made over 700 videos and he makes a video a day where he helps you expand your awareness. Quite amazing. Hi, Aaron. How are you doing today?
I'm doing awesome. Thank you for being here. Thank you for the introduction as well. I didn't realize I have 700 videos up until you just said it. I'm like, wow, that's a lot of videos.
Yeah, I mean, I noticed that because I am a YouTuber myself. So I am blown away by you because that is quite the dedication. And I want to say first, I really want to thank you because I discovered you only a few months ago and I started watching your videos. And what I noticed was that it's not only the knowledge, the wisdom that's coming forward, but it's the way I feel afterwards. Like you uplift me. I get happy after watching you. So now I get to thank you like in person. That is really nice. So thank you so much for that.
Thank you. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good to hear. I've always pictured when I do videos, I always make sure, because a lot of people ask me, how do you do videos every single day? And the way I do videos every day is I focus on the content a little bit, but I've always felt like it's more of the energy underneath the content. Because a lot of times some videos will seem somewhat similar. So it's like, oh, you're making another video on this. But if there's a little bit different angle and if it's a different energy behind it, then it's a different video. So I focus on that and I hear it from people, and it's good to hear because that is the intention as well. The intention is that it's more of an energetic thing. I think learning can be more of an energetic vibrational thing than just that of the content intellectual type thing. So that's good to hear. I'm happy that you said that. Thank you.
Yeah, I've understood that too because I'm a very mind girl, and I understood that it doesn't help me just to know all this wisdom if I'm not practicing it. That has become such a big thing. And sometimes I think we need to hear one thing over and over again before it's like, oh, now I get it.
Yeah.
So it's good with repetition because our minds is strange like that. But I wanna start off this conversation by asking about your journey because you have this dedication. Where does a dedication like that come from, and how did you receive all these insights that you're now sharing with others?
Yeah, so it actually happened. A lot of people see me and they kind of assume, because I have like a very positive outlook on life, they kind of assume that my whole entire life I've been like that. Like maybe I'm kind of like entitled, or I just was at a really great upbringing, so that's why I am the way that I am. But actually, the reason I am such a positive person is because of what I went through at a certain period of my life. So when I was up from the ages of about 7 years old to 15 years old, I had an ex. She's not my stepmom anymore, but she's my ex-stepmom. She was in my life between the ages of about 7 to 15. And she is someone that was very strict. She's someone that we would normally consider to be someone like a sociopath. She's very negative, very controlling. Me and my dad's a firefighter, still is, but he was a firefighter. So he was working 24-hour shifts, 24 hours on, 24 hours off. So he wasn't home as often, and we were left with her. So we were around her a lot. And in order for us to survive almost, in order for us to get by, we had to learn how to cope, and we had to learn how to be a certain way because we weren't allowed to have a lot of the things that most kids would have at our age. Between 7 and 15, me and my brother many times were locked outside and had to do chores all day. We weren't allowed inside. We had to sneak food because we were only allowed a bowl of cereal in the morning and then like a small TV dinner at night, and those would never really fill us up. So we weren't eating very much. If we got in trouble for something, and we would get in trouble for things that we didn't even necessarily do, but we had to lie and say that we did it in order to like, it was a weird thing. So we learned a lot of psychology in those years because she would be also someone that's considered to have what's called borderline personality disorder. So she was very intense, very angry person. And the only thing that we could get taken away was actually school. So like me and my brother, our only outlet was school. So what we would do is we would go to school. I was really into forensics debate towards the end of when my dad divorced her when I was 15 years old. And the only thing she could really take away was she could take away school from us. So we had to like work and kind of like I had to figure out ways to be able to go to like the forensics debate tournament or be able to go to the band camp type thing. You know what I mean? So it was a very unique situation. But being in the pain of that, because then 15 comes around, my dad kind of realizes what's going on in that period of time as well. She kind of brainwashed me and my brother to not want to have a relationship with our real mom because she told us stuff that wasn't true. She's this very manipulative person. I feel bad because my sisters are now going through that. That's their real mom, so they kind of have to go. They're going through it right now, and one of my sisters is trying to break away, but it's kind of hard because of that being her real mom. But anyways, all of that pain from 7 to 15 years old, not able to have friends, all of a sudden 15 comes around, I have to learn how to have friends. I have to not learn how to have friends because I've always been a very sociable person, but I had to become okay and not feel guilty when I'm around friends. I have to be allowed to not feel like I'm always being watched for something. Me and my brother used to break into the house when we were locked out to do chores for 8 hours, and we were like drinking out of a hose and stuff. We would break into the house and watch TV, and then we'd have like one of us would have like the last button on the TV remote. One of us would be on the lookout while one of us was watching TV, and then we'd have to like sneak just watching TV. Like the random stuff that kids had, we just didn't really have. We were sleeping on like it was a very unique situation now that I look back at it, because I realized that that's not normal, But anyways, 15 comes around, my dad divorces her. He kind of realizes stuff is going on. He knew stuff was going on, but we couldn't really say anything because if we did, we would get punished. And she would just kind of lie and manipulate, make it sound like we were the bad kids or whatever. So my dad figures it out. My dad divorces her. All of a sudden, me and my brother have freedom again. Me and my brother are allowed to have friends. We start developing friends. We're allowed to go to school, not feel guilty about it. We gain a whole bunch of, we start looking healthier because we're actually able to eat the food that we want. We're not like told you can only have one bowl of cereal and one TV dinner like 12 hours later. So we're starting to gain weight. We're starting to be healthier. And things started to go up from there because then we have freedom, So that period in my life, I was in a very constricted time to where I wasn't able to do what I wanted to do when I wanted to do it. I was at a place where I felt a lot of pain. So from that point forward, from 15 till about 21 or 22, I felt a lot of resistance and a lot of pain because why did this happen? Why did I have this ex-stepmom in my life that had it to where it was like, that kind of in a way made me, not have the freedom that most kids should have? Why did all of this stuff happen? And that ended up actually leading me, even after 15 years old comes around, we have all this freedom, we're able to connect to our real mom again and have a relationship with her. Even after all of that, I felt resistance. That resistance led to a spiritual awakening that happened in 2012. So this spiritual awakening experience I had,
Did that happen like organically in a way or by grace, or did you like practice it?
I would say it's a little bit of both, to be honest with you. Because what it was is I was working at the time, I was going to college, I was working at Nordstrom's in women's shoes. So I was working there. I had what they call ADHD, which means I was taking Adderall, which is the prescription drug they give for it. And that was something that would help me focus, but there were harsh side effects of it. The side effects were you couldn't eat very much, you couldn't sleep very much, but when I took it, I would make a lot of money, I'd be very focused. So, because I've always had a lot of energy, but it was just I didn't know how to balance out that energy. So you go to a doctor, they say, hey, you have ADHD, here's some Adderall, right? So I took that for a couple of years while I was working at Nordstrom's. The side effects, though, of that prescription were you couldn't eat very much, you couldn't sleep very much. So that caused me to want to find out more of what can I do instead that doesn't have those side effects. So I came across and found meditation online. And, the research, black and white research that says, hey, if you meditate, you're going to increase the amount of serotonin, dopamine in your brain, decrease the cortisol, pretty much all the stuff that you would get from Adderall, you can get naturally by meditating. So I said, okay, I'm going to give this meditation stuff a try. I don't know how much I resonate with it, but I'm going to at least try it. So I went home, and it was like the first day, there wasn't a huge difference because I was trying to control my own thoughts, and I felt resistance because I thought I wasn't doing it right. Second day, it was kind of the same thing, but the third day, I learned how to observe my thoughts. And there was this moment where there was this feeling where I just knew that my whole life was going to be different. I just felt this kind of rush of energy, and I became aware of the beliefs that I had about who I am, the beliefs that I had ADHD. I became aware of how my beliefs were creating the kind of experiences that I had. I then started to tap into this, this spiritual connection we all have, but I started to feel it. It became a very visceral feeling because what used to be very, and still am to a certain extent, very intellectual. So I'm like, I have to understand this, but it became a feeling that I couldn't really label. It was just this knowing, this feeling. And ever since then, I've had this feeling and this knowing that what we experience in our life is simply a reflection of what we believe to be true. And since then, I've been able to kind of take inventory of my whole entire life and to let go of a lot of things that I used to believe. So I used to have this perspective of my ex-stepmom being abusive and all of this stuff that went with it. It was kind of a victim mentality. And wow, some people would look at it and be like, well, you have every right to be a victim. But I realized that it wasn't serving me, and I reframed it because I realized that from, you could say, a soul contract point of view, it was something that I agreed to experience. So in that moment, it transformed. All that weight from the past began to let go, and I realized that I was actually grateful for it in a weird way, because it led to a spiritual awakening that then changed my whole entire life. From that moment forward, I used to be somebody that was like drinking. You know, I would like go out with friends drinking. I was younger as well, you know, but I never had a feeling to drink again. Never had to smoke weed, never had to do anything, because I just felt so different. And this is kind of the way I describe it. On a scale of 1 to 10, just like a random scale, 1 to 10, I normally felt about a 3, 4, or 5 out of 10. 1 feeling not great at all, 10 feeling amazing. 3 to a 5 out of 10 was my base point. After I learned meditation, I had this kind of spiritual experience. It moves my baseline to about a 7 or an 8 out of 10. So I felt high all of the time. And it was surreal because I walked around. I'm not enlightened. So sometimes I say that, and people, even on my YouTube channel, are like, oh, you're enlightened. I'm not enlightened. But there was this experience that I had to where then I was feeling at like a 7 or 8 out of 10. And I remember walking around my room for like 2 or 3 weeks thinking, is this feeling going to go away? Because I felt so good. I couldn't describe it. I couldn't explain it. And it never went away. It just became my natural set point. It became my natural vibrational, how I feel. Now I still fluctuate. So it's not like I'm perfect high vibe all of the time. But now the lower vibrations I feel now are more like frustration, or they're not as deep emotions as they used to be. And I think it's just because I've let go of the past. I don't really identify with it anymore. And I think it was actually a good thing that propelled me into this little bit of a higher state of emotion or consciousness for me. Now, what I'm realizing is as I go along the journey, is as long as I'm attached to my ego at some level, which we're all, there's a purpose behind the ego, and the ego is something we're all having a physical life experience with. So it's something we're going to have at a certain level. But the more I let go of that ego, the more I realize that 1 out of 10 scale is obsolete. There's actually a 15 out of 10. There's actually a 20 out of 10. It's all relative.
Right.
So enlightenment might actually be a 25 out of 10, but at least I was able to go from that resistance and that pain to that of the 7 or 8 out of 10, which for me was feeling really good a majority of the time, to where now I can't, if I do drink, it brings my vibration down. If I do, like, I don't smoke weed, I don't smoke cigarettes or anything, but if I did, it would bring my vibration down and I wouldn't feel as good. So why taper with that? It's kind of like how that changed for me. So now one of my goals is helping other people to make that same shift, because it's not an intellectual shift. Many times we think it's an intellectual thing.
Right. I want to say, though, after all those I've interviewed and I've been on the journey for a long time, it seems like you had very quick shift here. Like after your 3rd meditation, you had an experience like that. Like that, I would say it's, I wouldn't say normal was normal or not, but that is rare, I would say, that it happens so quickly, because I've been talking to people who have been meditating for a long time and they haven't felt any, received or feel that they're accessing a higher awareness or anything. They just feel like, sometimes they've said to me, I feel worse afterwards because I just think about all the thoughts that are popping up in my head. And I think our journeys are very different. And I also wanted to mention the pain that can be a motivator. Like that is something I see very often. If we can see the pain as actually not something bad, but of course it hurts and it's awful, but still it is a motivator to get out of it, to do something new. And I wanted to mention that. But what do you say to people like that? They say, I've been meditating for such a long time. I really want to experience what you have, but I'm not. I get annoyed by all the thoughts and they don't calm down.
The key is what I did the 3rd day that made all the difference. And what I did the 3rd day that was different is I allowed the thoughts to be there. So normally what happened is the first 2 days I was trying to control my mind. I was trying to control my thoughts. And it was shortly after I was really getting into like The Secret and understand law of attraction. So I'm thinking to myself, I'm creating resistance because I don't want to think negative thoughts. I don't want to think negative thoughts because I'm going to create more of this in my life. So I was feeling resistance. But I read something. It was something I actually read that said, allow the thoughts. It was a feeling I had too. When I read this thing that said, that was mentioning observing the thoughts from a neutral place. Because this is also what I realized. Everything in our life is fundamentally neutral. There's no built-in meaning in anything. It's all based on what we generate meaning to be. So knowing that, even if a thought comes into my head that's like, you should be doing something different. This is a negative thing you don't want to create in your life. Why are you thinking it? Even if that thought came into my head, I was able to observe it as just a thought. It wasn't good. It wasn't bad. It's just a thought. So when I started to observe those thoughts, that was when I was able to see it come into my mind, and then it would leave. I would see it come into my mind, and I would see it leave. And I would just observe it. I would be with them. I would allow them to be there. And by allowing it to be there, they would start to go away. It's a funny paradox. But the more you allow something to be there, the more eventually it starts to go away because it's almost like we're processing it. But a lot of people that have this goal with meditation, it's nothing bad because I've been there as well, having a goal of wanting to accomplish something or wanting to do something. The frame a lot of times from that is I want to do something because I want to become more than I currently am. I want to experience more than I ever have before. There's this strong desire, and sometimes desire is a good thing, but many times desire actually holds us back. Because the more we say I really, really want something, we energetically say I really, really don't have. So when I went into meditation, I wasn't necessarily like I need to have this enlightening experience. I was just having the intention to observe my thoughts from a neutral place and to get rid of so I didn't have to take Adderall. But I had this intuitive feeling the third day. I just knew it was this weird feeling that I just knew that my whole life was going to be different. And I don't know if it was a feeling from like my higher self or if it was my ego making that choice. But whichever it was, it ended up working because from that point going forward, my life radically changed. I felt different about everything. I remember going into work like 2-3 weeks after that. And it was just my energy changed so much because before when I was at work, I've always been a very loud person, but I was like a very obnoxious person at my job. And I was very out, just kind of like doing things to get a reaction from people. I like to see how people would respond. I was more edgy. After I come back, it's not that I'm a quiet person, but I'm much more grounded. I'm much more centered. And people are like, what's going on with you? Like people couldn't figure it out. Some people thought I was on drugs because I was so different. It's like there was no other way they could explain how different I was. But it was just a centeredness. I was becoming more, then they asked me what's changed. I'm like, I'm meditating, I'm doing this, which then, some people will think, oh, then it must be drugs. It must be doing some like acid or something like that. And it was none of that. It was, if anything, it was the opposite. It was like I wasn't drinking anymore. I didn't feel the need to do any of that. It was just meditating twice a day, 10 minutes in the morning or 15, 20 minutes in the morning, 15, 20 minutes right before bed. But that's what changed my vibration the most. And from that point going forward, it was there. But a lot of people go in it with the intention to get somewhere they're currently not, which is the ego's perspective. And there's a part of us that goes beyond that of the ego. And the part of us that's there is the part that we can begin to tap into. We could call that the higher self. We could call that many different names. But it's about having that awareness of the ego, the reaction mind, the wanting more, that kind of mentality to that of the being present to the moment, observing, allowing things to be. Because when we get there, that all dissolves.
And I think also sometimes we forget how far we've come. For me, for instance, it has been a long journey. It has been going on for a long time, and I was really depressed at one time, and then I worked on myself, or I say worked on myself, but what I actually did was starting to love myself and really noticed, or I started giving respect to my own emotions. And that took 2 years or something. And when I got out of the depression, I was at a completely different state that I've never been before. Because before I was in that, and I know you talk about it, this hypnotic state where, everything is happening to me. All of a sudden, I woke up to, I am powerful. Wow. I don't have to put myself below other people because I used to do that. I used to be very concerned with status, and they were successful. I was not successful, or I was successful if I performed on stage. And it was all about this game. But then I realized that it's not about that. It's about I can choose, you know, who I want to be in life. Like, this is my life. Like, it was a completely new perspective. And now I'm, you know, at a completely a higher, I wouldn't say higher level, but a different level than in my, you know, right after the depression. And just looking back, I'm a completely different person, but still I'm expanding more and more. But for me, it has been this long journey. So I can easily forget that I've changed. And I think you know, it's good to sometimes think about where you were before and where you're now, just to motivate yourself with change is happening. But for some people, it's happening rapidly. And for others, it's like getting slower.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And sometimes people hold themselves back from changing because they identify and define their reality with their beliefs that they aren't changing. Everything is always changing. It's just how much of a great degree of change are we going to allow ourselves to make? Because even if we keep recreating the illusion that everything's are staying the same, that's a definition that might be causing us to stay in that same mentality, because part of our identity is that or where we are currently in our life is that things just aren't changing. And we have this definition. I can always tell where people are in their, you know, with the questions they ask me, because I get a lot of DMs or whatever just from the YouTube channel, a lot of comments. And I can always tell the frame of the question they're asking. And a lot of times the beliefs are normally within the question itself. So they'll say, how can I, they'll say, like, how did you experience this when it's been really, really hard for me? Well, in that really, really hard for me, well, maybe they're calling it like it is because it's been really, really hard, but maybe they have a belief that it's really, really hard for them, and that belief in itself is reaffirming that things are hard in life. There's a belief there. There's a root belief that is causing that experience. So the thing to do would be to say, what would I have to believe is true to be experiencing this kind of experience, to be having this kind of block or this kind of definition? Because our definitions really create our kind of experience. And
beliefs is so interesting, and it's sometimes I feel it's a challenge, and I have a belief about that, because there's some beliefs that I haven't been able to resolve. And one of them, I can give you a good example of it, because I did a tennis match when I was 12 years old and I lost it. And in that tennis, and I was very good at tennis, but in that tennis match, I felt like she was playing like a coward, and I was like really active and pushing, and all of a sudden I couldn't hit the ball. Like something happened with my hand, like I couldn't hit. I got so nervous, and I had match ball, and I lost the game, and I never forgot that. And after that, I haven't been able to play that well tennis. So because something happens every time I'm this is quite personal, but I want to share it because it's such a good example. But something happens when I hit the ball. And I'm like, wow, that belief system has gone so far down in my system, in my body, that is physical. It's physical. And I noticed you said in a video that we just have to be aware of it, and then it can change, like the belief system is changed. But when it gets physical like that, do you have any advice? What do we do? Do we really have to go into like I don't know, a deep meditative state, like hypnosis or something, to like pull the core belief up?
It can be done. What I would recommend to someone like you with that kind of situation, we all have our own version of that at some level, because we've all been through, you know, growing at a certain, especially earlier on in life, or absorbing your environment. The key, what I would recommend you to do, is to actually go into a meditative state and to feel and to relive that same experience exactly as it happened. Not as it should have happened, not if you would have done things differently, not trying to make it different than it was. Go into a meditative state where you actually feel like, in a visualization, where you feel like you are there again. And pay attention to the feelings that come up. Pay attention to the emotions that come up. Because part of you doesn't want that to be there, that past experience, or identifies with it as the story about what happened to why you are the way you are now. So there's, in a way, kind of like a story that's patterned into being there based on past experience. Now, it's not so much that you have to try to change the past, but it's more so allow yourself to relive, not just think about it and just remember what it was like. Relive and feel the emotions that you felt then, Because then what happens is as you feel the emotions, you then allow it to leave your body. You allow yourself to process it. When it happened, there was a moment that happened that you decided subconsciously that either that shouldn't have been there, or like it had something to do with your identity for the way you see yourself. There could have been many different things going on, but in general, what it was kind of like a jolt in the pattern of who you are, of thinking it should have been different. What I would recommend is literally to imagine it happening now. And this is paradoxical, especially for people like really into the niche of what I share on YouTube with the law of attraction. Why would I do that? Because I'm going to attract more situations like that. That's what a lot of people think. But no, what you want to do is you want to think of your body like an energy field. And what happens is we have an energy field that goes far beyond our body, more so than just our hands or the physical expression of ourselves. And in a moment that something happened in the past, there was this disturbance within our own energy field that was tagged onto our identity, something that happened that hasn't been completely processed because we felt it and we judged ourselves for feeling it. You probably judged yourself maybe for years of it should have been differently. Why did this happen? There's something wrong with me. Could have been many different ways that you were judging yourself. But the key to that is actually that I have found to be powerful with people I've worked with and also just for myself is to relive that experience, to allow whatever emotions to come up and to let them be there. Don't resist it. Let them be there. As you do that, when you think of your energy field, imagine that as you process the emotion, it then can leave your energy field. It then leaves your energy field. But anytime it's like we have a toroidal field around our body, every time we're thinking certain thoughts and we activate certain vibrations or they're even subconsciously there, it's being filtered through this disturbance in your energy field from when that actually happened, from that story that you tell yourself, that you remind yourself of. And there could be neuro associations that when you walk around in your daily life, you may see something that is of a similar color of something you saw in that tennis match experience that subconsciously is bringing you back and drawing that vibration within you without you even knowing. It's called like a neuro association, as like Tony Robbins would call it. But in the same way, what you could do is become aware of that pattern and allow yourself to feel it, because once you process it, you allow it to be there, you then let it go. That's where the power is, because then it can actually leave your energy field. It's like it's served its purpose in a way. And its purpose is just to show you and to allow you to process it, because once you process it, then it transforms. Sometimes people hear things and processes like this and they assume, oh, it's got to be much more complicated than that. Like, it can't just be as easy as me. System. Yeah, exactly. And sometimes what are our beliefs about beliefs? Because we might have a belief that says a belief is hard to change.
Yes, and I'm very aware that I believe that this one is hard to change. I'm aware of it. Like, it's almost...
That's where the power is.
Yeah.
So the power then is in you being aware of it. You can then see that every time you bring yourself back to that emotion, especially once you've done what I've explained with like the allowing the emotion to be there, if you keep on going and bringing yourself back to that story, it no longer is necessarily a belief. It's more of, it is a belief, but it's a choice. It's almost like you're choosing to go back because you're aware of it. If you're unaware that you're bringing yourself back to that story, then it's just a habit that's on autopilot. It's that reaction mind that I've been talking about recently in my new recent videos as well, is this reaction, social conditioning mind. And what we begin to do is we begin to wake up from that. We begin to engage. We begin to become consciously aware of it. But it's in the allowance of it to be there, letting it be there, and the letting and the completing of that pattern, because you allow yourself to feel whatever emotion comes up, you will then transform it. For me, when I was remembering my past with my ex-stepmom, I allowed the emotions to be there. I allowed me to feel angry. I allowed me to feel like I was being put down because of the abusive situations with her, both physically and mentally. I allowed myself to be there. And by allowing it to be there, it started to transform. But it wasn't about me thinking it should have been different, or me trying to change it, or me trying to remember it differently. And the more we do that, and the more we realize as well, the past experience you had, there's two parts of what happened. There is what happened, which is you lost the match, right? Or whatever it was. And there's the story we tell ourselves about what happened. That story is what carries with us. Now, here's the thing that neuroscience shows us. Neuroscience shows us that every time we remember a memory, we take it out of the memory bank. We look at that memory, we change it a little bit, and then we put it back in the memory bank. We change it by adding our interpretations, our perceptions, our thoughts, our opinions, and then we put it back. So by the time you've thought of this memory, which by now may have been thousands of times, like many of us, we've thought of these past experiences thousands of times, we have changed the memory so much that what you think of as the past isn't even the past anyways as you remember it. It was simply just that. Just like I can look at the past, and as harsh as this may sound, I could look at it from, in my past, I'm not worthy because of this and that. All of that is a story. Or I could look at what actually happened. What actually happened was I was abused by my ex-stepmom. That was something, and even then, abused is even a story in of itself. It could be just my ex-stepmom hit me, and she said this, and she said that. It just is what it is. But if I have a story that overlies it, which isn't saying like I should like, you know, try to like remove all emotion from it. But what I'm saying is that the past and what we think the past isn't even really what happened. It's our beliefs, our interpretation, and our story about what happened. And if we let go of the story by realizing the truth, that every time we remember it, we add on a layer of our own perception, of our own expectation, of our own story, that every time we remember it, we're changing it. What we think of as the past isn't even the past as we remember it, and it may be totally different than we can even imagine.
It's really...
So,
yeah.
It's kind of, that's where the shift is. The shift, that is an experience where we realize that the past is different than what we actually thought that it is. That's just the awareness that in the present moment right now, we think of our past as set because it's in our memory bank. But even as it's in our memory bank, it's perception. It's from the point of the ego, of the reaction mind. Everything in our life has been in reaction mode, you know, in reaction to what happens. But now that we're more aware, we can more so observe this reaction mode, this social conditioning, this way we have to be, and all of these things, that we can start to let go of it more and more. Versus being in that mode and thinking that we are our story, we are what happened to ourselves. But when you start to really tap into the present moment, we realize that whatever comes up, comes up. It's okay. We start to then transform the negative past that we may have had.
And I think it also is a divine timing, because it comes up when you're ready for it. Like, I've let go of so many belief systems, but I know like that has been like that one I don't want to look at, because I've been thinking, oh, it's impossible because it's physical. And for me, when things are physical, it's even deeper. And I know that I wasn't allowed to cry because I wanted to cry when I lost, and the adults were like, don't cry. And I know, like, you know, I haven't been able to cry those emotions, but now I feel ready. And I also know so well that when we accept and embrace our emotions, then they let go, because it is when we put the guilt and the shame, then we are vibrating much lower because of all the emotions that different frequencies. So I know this, but then a deeper part, you know, just wants to stick to that belief system. But I think I'm ready for it now. And I think it comes up now, like I was 12 years old and now I'm 38. So it's quite a long time. But now I'm ready.
You may find that what happens when you do it is those emotions of crying may come up.
Yep.
Because you're processing emotion that was suppressed for so many years.
Yep.
So I think that you doing that, reliving it, feeling the emotion of it, you may find yourself crying, but that cry will be a releasing.
Yeah.
And by releasing it, you will then let go of it between your energy pattern and the toroidal field around your body. You're going to let go of it. And as you let go of it, that's when that story, that past, the cellular memory inside your body, you'll begin to really start to let it go.
Yeah. Wonderful. I wanted to share that because I think it's a good example, and also for you guys, that we have beliefs of what is possible for us or not possible. So to become aware when we think that, well, that's not for me, that's not possible for me, to become aware that that's just a belief, it's not the truth, and we can choose the truth. All right, Aaron, thank you so much. And thank you for sharing your so open-heartedly your story. That's really brave, and it helps others. So thank you for that. Thank you so much for having me on. I really appreciate you sharing your energy with me. And I love what you're doing as well on your channel. It's awesome. Thank you. And thank you for watching, guys. And remember to subscribe to both our channels. All right. Much light. Bye.